to lesson 2. This is going to be the positive parenting tool.
Yeah, this is the tool, and this is the whole tool. We're going to give you the whole tool today. And this is particularly used when a child has misbehaved in a pretty severe way, and you have to, and it really needs a teaching moment, and probably you're really frustrated and you're pulling your hair out and you don't know what to do. We're going to teach you what to do.
So it's both for specific incidents, and maybe does it also apply to a behavior over time? Like, for instance, saying my child has this problem with something that I can't think of. They have a problem with truth telling.
Mm-hmm.
So can you address an overall issue, or do you have to address a specific incident?
No, it has to be a specific incident, but it can be an overall issue in this sense, in that you use the tool in a specific incident. And then you continue to use the tool each time that incident happens, but each time you're going through the same process, so the child is learning. It's an individual incident by incident, but should be used for these overall things, because you're just teaching the child each time that they misbehave, or in this case they lie to you, and you know they've lied. You'll use it, and then the next time they lie, you'll use it again, and the next time they lie, you'll use it again, and eventually the goal is that they will eventually stop lying, because they'll be learning over time as they work with you on this tool.
Okay, so explain to us.
Okay, so this tool has 5 steps. I love numbers, if you haven't noticed. I love 5 levels of consciousness, 4 levels of motivation, 6 spheres of influence, and 5 steps to positive parenting.
Okay.
So the 5 steps to positive parenting are these. Number 1, you reward your child for their attention. This is the step that most parents, when I teach this tool to, they really struggle, because they're like, I can't reward my child for just say we're lying.
Bad behavior.
For lying. I can't reward my child for lying. I say, you're not. You're rewarding them for their attention. Right? And then even some coaches and therapists that I've talked about this with, they're like, well, my clients really take that hard, so I just tell them, you're rewarding yourself. And I said, well, that's not what you're doing. And it's not a good way to teach them.
Okay, so give an example of how you reward a child for
Okay,
their attention.
so there's so many different ways. The easiest way is a small piece of candy. Sometimes you might just use a couple of M&Ms or something like that. Now, that's not always the best thing. I'm just saying that's the easiest thing that's easy to come by, because we do that so much in our society. Actually, one of the ways that I found is the most effective is a coloring page. And to sit down and give your child a coloring page with some colored pencils or crayons, so and you sit down with them, and you also color. So you're sitting together and you're doing something together. Now that might be
unless you have a child that hates coloring. Like
well, then you would use. That's what I say. You can use whatever reward works. You know, maybe it's going out and sitting on the front porch and having a popsicle. Maybe it's sitting on the front porch with. If you've been in the military, get your medals out and go ask your child to come sit with you and talk to him about the medals that you earned while you were in the military.
Maybe it's take your family pet and sit together and pet the family
pet. Absolutely. There's any number of rewards.
So what you're saying is the child has misbehaved in some way, and the action you're taking first is to sit down with them with something that gives them a positive association of sitting down with you.
Correct.
And it's hard, because the parents think, my child has misbehaved. And what do you think when your child has misbehaved? Usually you feel pretty agitated. Mm-hmm. And your innate feelings are something along the lines of, I just want to wring this child's neck.
Right.
Your natural feeling is, I would like to act out my emotions in some negative, punitive way towards this child.
And there's also a natural desire for justice.
Yeah.
My child, if I give my child a reward, how are they being served justice for what they've done? And so there's this, there's both of these things, and that's actually, the justice side is actually a good thing to be feeling. I do want but we're going to get there, because you are going to get there. You're going to get to the point where.
So that's the point that's important to remember at this first step, is that you might think, well, how is this different than gentle parenting, where we're going to just be all love and sunshine and roses and no consequences.
Right. Now,
and the consequences are coming.
The consequence comes later, but here's the thing you have to remember too. If you remember, hopefully taking this course, you've already listened to and gone through the levels of motivation. And think about this. The first thing that child is going through is the motivation of fear of consequence. When you get their attention, you're usually getting their attention right after they've done something inappropriate. There's automatic fear of consequence that they've got already. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
So,
and even if it's not right after the action, they know that they usually know your attention has been drawn to the misdeed.
Right.
And they do. Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're taking them
before you with fear and trembling.
You're moving them in this very first step. You're moving them from fear of consequence to a desire for reward. Think about that. You're just moving their level of motivation. You're bringing them to a higher level of motivation. You're going to come talk to me not because I'm mad at you, but you're going to come talk to me because you're going to get a reward. You're going to get a blessing for coming to me. Right? So it's very similar to our Heavenly Father. When I make a mistake, He wants me to come to Him for forgiveness, to pray to Him and ask for forgiveness. He wants me to come to Him for that blessing. I want my child to come to me for the blessing. Even though I made the mistake, Heavenly Father is not up there thinking, well, I really need to punish this guy. He's up there thinking, I really hope that he comes to me so I can give him the blessing of forgiveness. Right?
Okay, so what's the second step?
Okay, so our second step, we'll think about this.
Okay.
What are we going to do next? Where do we want to go from reward?
Well, we've moved from fear of consequences to desire for reward. The next level of motivation is love and respect. So I'm assuming the next step is going to move you into feeling love and respect.
Exactly. The next 3 steps are actually going to move you there and hold you there for a while. And so what will happen, the very next step after you've given your child the reward, you've spent some time doing whatever it is that you're going to do with them, then you're going to ask them this question. You're going to just ask them, so can you tell me about what happened? Don't be specific in your question in this case. Let your child simply tell you.
So you don't want to say, can you tell me about how you hit your brother?
Yeah, no, don't want to do that, because you want them to tell you that they hit their brother. You don't want to tell them that they hit their brother. Can you tell me what happened? And then you're going to listen, and you're not going to say, oh, but I heard that you hit your brother, but I heard that, or I saw you do this. Right? You're not going to do that. You're just going to listen. After they've said what they need to say, then you're going to move to the next step. So that's step 2. Step 1 is reward your child for their attention. Step 2 is to ask your child, can you tell me what happened? Tell me about what happened. And listen. Step 3 is now you're going to tell them what your perspective of the situation was. Now you can say, well, you know, what I saw you hit your brother. You know, maybe you didn't know what happened before that, and they've explained it to you. So now you can say, wow, that's interesting. What I saw you hit your brother, but I didn't know that your brother had called you a name before that. So you really taught me something about this situation, right? So but then you're gonna go on and tell your whole perspective of what happened, and that might be I saw, or it might be somebody came and talked to me about it, and this is what I heard, But you're just gonna tell them your perspective, right? So you've given the reward, you've listened to them, you've told them your perspective, and now you're gonna solidify. So these two steps 2 and 3 have moved them into that love and respect. I love you enough to listen to you. I love you enough to tell you my perspective. Now you're going to solidify that love and respect by paying your child a compliment. You're going to tell them something that you really appreciate about them. And if at all possible, compliment them in relation to what happened to the situation, so that they're not only thinking of that situation as a negative, but there's something positive there, if at all possible.
So this reminds me of a lot of people say that maybe their grandmother gave this advice, that you should have a punishment sandwich where you have a compliment. No, you have a positive, negative, a positive, right? So maybe you give a compliment and then you give the negative about what the child did and then the positive. And this is kind of like that. It's not exactly the same, but you are starting with a reward, which is very positive. Then you're discussing the negative incident. You're doing it in as neutral a way as possible, but that still is kind of the negative part of the interaction. It's not comfortable to talk about our misbehaviors. A child almost always has a sense of embarrassment and shame over what they've done.
And oftentimes in the beginning, when you're first using this tool with a child, they're not going to tell you what happened. Sometimes they'll just sit there quietly, and you have to listen to their quietness. Sometimes you have to just listen to their quietness. And after you've listened to them being quiet for 30 seconds to a minute, then you give
maybe even a little longer.
Or maybe a little longer. Then you give your perspective, and then you give them a compliment. The thing about that compliment is doing is that it's...
So you've got reward, you've got this negative, neutral section in the middle, and then you've got a compliment. So you've got that kind of sandwich.
But it's not negative. And
I know.
I don't want it to feel negative, because the whole point is you should not be negative at any point in this tool. It's a positive tool. Every part of it should be positive. But
so it's not quite like the sandwich. I was just making a
comparison.
Yeah,
exactly. No, I think I get the comparison. I like the comparison. I just want to make sure that people know, don't be negative in that section.
That's very important.
Because you should not be negative at all through this whole tool, because if you're negative at any point, it totally destroys the tool, and it doesn't work. Because the point is, you're trying to teach, one of the points anyways, is that you're trying to teach your children that coming to talk to you about problems is a positive experience, that there's no negative to it. It's all positive. And that's what that compliment at the end does, is it solidifies that love and respect. It says, you know what? I love you. I love you. I love everything about you, even in this situation. I love you. And I think about President Nelson and the time he was talking about when he was doing surgery, and he had his one of his assistants did something. I can't remember what they did, but they did something that kind of made the surgery more stressful. And after the surgery was over, he told him, he said, you know what? I love you. Sometimes I love you more than other times. and so but I think it's important that it's always positive.
I remember, since we're telling anecdotes, I remember a time when I was a teenager, and I was a particularly messy teenager. I have just a natural tendency towards disorderliness. And I remember my dad doesn't like messes. He really doesn't. I remember a time I was in my room, and my dad came in, and he opened the door, and he saw just this huge mess in the room. And I could tell what he really wanted to do was criticize me in some way and tell me I needed to get my act together and get my room clean. And then just then on my stereo came on the next song on my tape that was playing, which was a tape by Bobby Vinton. And the song started, I love you the way you are. Oh, I love you the way you are. And he just paused there for a minute and said, I love you the way you are, and shut the door and walked away. Anyway.
Yeah. But I
actually,
it's that
it's funny. I did feel loved at that moment.
Yeah, because your dad maintained a positivity in his interaction with you, and that's what positive parenting is. That's really all it is positivity. But this particular tool.
Before we go on to the, I just want to say, looking back on that memory, I definitely felt more motivated to clean my room than I would have had he said, "This room's a mess. Get it cleaned up. You're a terrible, messy person."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't turn me into a tidy person, this incident, but
Well,
the motivation
no,
in that moment was positive.
but when
and
you think about it, what it did, because here's the thing. I don't want you to think about, hey, this tool is going to make my child do what I want them to do. That's not the point. What this tool is going to do is it's going to make your child feel confident, and it's going to make your child feel like they belong. Your dad made you feel like you belonged. That you belonged as a part of his family by being positive with you and telling you, I love you the way you are. He didn't damage that sense of belonging. Whereas if he said, well, you are messy, you need to get this cleaned up, there would have been a sense of, well, I guess I don't fit in to his idea of what his children should be. So really, these tools aren't to fix your child's behavior. These tools are to teach your children that you love them and will always love them just the way they are.
But paradoxically, that does have an effect on the
Yes.
child's behavior.
It does. It does. Very, very frequently. Okay, so really quickly,
move
let me
on
go
to
to
the
this next
Yes.
part. Because now we've moved the child into the love and respect motivation. We've solidified that. So now hopefully they're not going to slide back, right? That's the point, is we don't want to slide backwards. Now we need to move them to the final level, to motivation by character. And this is how you do that. After you've complimented your child, you need to ask them, okay, what do you think needs to happen now? Open-ended. Don't give them choices. Don't say, do we need to do this or this? You can do this or this. Don't say, okay, now you need to go apologize to your brother. Or you don't do that. You say, what do you think needs to happen now? And you give your child an opportunity to come up with their own solution to the problem that they've created.
So how does this work with a really small child, like a 2-year-old? Do you ask them what needs to happen now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Little kids are really good at coming up. They're better than older kids oftentimes at coming up with a good solution. Now, here's the thing that's important here at this stage, especially in the beginning of using the tool. Oftentimes, children don't know what an appropriate solution is because they've never been taught or because they've never had to think through it to come up with a solution because everybody's always given them solutions. And so they may say, I probably should go apologize. And you might think, well, that's okay, but that's not enough.
Or they might say, you should lock me in my room for 3 days.
Yes, exactly. Oftentimes children will be more severe on themselves than you would ever be on them when you give them a choice, when you give them that open-ended,
say what should
happen. So here's what happens.
It can go either way.
So they're going to give you a solution. This is what I think should happen. And what you need to do is if their solution is good, and it fits the situation.
It's an appropriate level.
Right, you simply accept it and say, okay, let's go take care of that. Don't say, okay, you go take care of it. Say, let's go take care of that. Include yourself in that consequence. Don't ever send your child away to deal with it. But say, okay, let's go take care of that. Now, if they take care of it, it's done. You're done. You don't have to do anything else. Your parenting is done for that incident. Now, if they come up with either too severe a consequence or too light of a consequence, you just have to modify it. Okay, I think that's a great idea.
Do you do that through negotiation, or do you just offer a modified suggestion for them to accept?
Well, you could, depending on the child. A young child, you're probably just going to offer them a modified version. Say, okay, I think that's a really good idea. Can we also do this? Can we add this to it? And the child's almost always, oh, yeah, of course we can. Or, wow, that seems pretty harsh.
So,
can we pull it back a little bit? Maybe we can do this instead. and then they could either agree or disagree. So you're negotiating with them.
So what, in your example that we've been talking about, where there was hitting involved, and you say just apologizing is too light of a recompense. What would you'd say? Okay, good, you're going to apologize, and what would you add in that situation? Would it depend on the specific child?
It would depend on the child and the situation.
And I suppose now you've heard out the whole situation, so you know how severe it is. Whether it's like,
right. So what if the child hit the other child because the child took their toy that they were playing with? I'm playing with a toy. My sibling takes the toy away, so I hit my sibling. All right. What's an appropriate thing to do in that case? Well, apologizing is good, but probably not enough for hitting. Physical harm is serious and can cause serious damage, so it needs to be a little bit more. And I might say, okay, that's a good idea to say you're sorry. What if you also gave them permission to use the toy for the rest of the day that you were playing with, that they took away from you? Okay, right, that might be just something to add to it. Now, having said that, the child who took the toy away might also need some positive parenting. And you might need to teach them and have them go through this same scenario.
Okay, so let's say in this scenario that you've discovered that there's another child who needs an intervention in this moment. You've finished the end of the tool. You've said, okay, let's go take care of this. Do you let the first child act on their action plan first before you take the second child aside?
Always. Always let once they've come up with a solution, let them solve their problem and then draw the other child aside and work with them through their issue. So you always do that. Now, it is also possible that sometimes that two children are involved and you want to, I had a client that I worked with recently. She was getting ready to move and her children were just driving her crazy and she wasn't being able to do anything. And so she asked me, so what do I do? And I said, well, have you tried positive parenting? She said, well, it's all the kids. I said, great, then give them all a reward. And so she did. She had the whole family together. She made them root beer floats and they all sat down together and they went through this process. She asked them and let them each give their perspective on what was going on. She talked about her perspective. She complimented each of the children in turn. And then she asked them what needs to happen. And they came up with a solution that actually worked really well. And she and the children had the last couple of weeks of their getting packing and stuff went really well and really smoothly. Now that doesn't mean that it wasn't stressful, because packing and getting ready to move is stressful, but the stress of taking of the kids and the moving together was
we've had a lot of success as a family addressing issues as a whole family in this way, and we might have not have said we're doing the positive parenting tool. Maybe we said we're having a family council about a problem. But I think sometimes when the whole group is all together, you get the strength of counseling for a solution that can really just be really beneficial. I was thinking of specific time when I was feeling really overwhelmed by how much whining and complaining there was when I was assigning chores or asking children to do tasks. And we had a family council about this, and we basically did all of these steps.
The positive parenting,
and in the end, the solution my children came up with was that whenever I asked them to do something, they were supposed to say, I'd be happy to, no matter how they felt about it. And it was okay if they said it in a grumpy voice or a tired voice or a frustrated voice, so long as they said, I'd be happy to. And it was transformative in our home.
I think it's ever since then. Our home has been very, very different.
And that became a tool you used with your clients. I mean, it was like that solution you went on and taught lots of other people. But that was just something my children came up with in a meeting using the positive parenting tool.
And we'll be doing that tool in our final lesson of this class. That's one of the tools that we'll teach. There's a positive.
But I'm just saying that thing that's a life coaching light bulb moment that you've taught dozens of parents.
Oh, yeah.
Came from our children. They came up with that solution in a counseling group setting when they were trying to solve a problem our family was having.
Right. And so that's the thing, is it positive, and one of the things that's great about a group positive parenting experience is that some children might be inclined to exaggerate the consequence and make it bigger than it needs to be. And some children might be inclined to minimize the consequence. And when you get them together, what's wonderful is you get this compromise that takes you right where you should be. And it's beautiful to watch when you get a group of children together and you watch them negotiate. And like you said, they came up with this great plan. And it's because they negotiated with each other to get to that point, because some of them were minimizing, some of them were exaggerating the consequence that needed to happen, and they were able to compromise in the middle at something that was really works. And think about the Spirit, the Holy Spirit is with us, and it's stronger when we're united together. I mean, we're told that in the Doctrine and Covenants, that when we come together, where there's two or three of us together, that's there God will be. And so when you're doing this with your whole family, I think it has an added strength. Now, you don't always want to do it with the whole family, because sometimes it's an individual child that you're working with that needs a specific lesson, you know, and you want to teach them through the positive parenting. But you don't want all the other children there, because they don't want to be singled out in front of everybody.
Yeah. So you shouldn't do a group when it's one person's problem.
Right.
Kids know who it is
that's getting in trouble.
If there's one child that's been doing something and you're like, okay, let's have a family meeting so that we can all talk about how we need to wipe down the toilet seat after you use the bathroom, and everybody knows who it is that's not been wiping down the toilet. They all know, whether you say it or not. You don't want to do that unless it's a pervasive whole family problem.
Right. So let me just really quickly run through the 5 steps.
That's exactly what I was going to say that you should do next.
Okay.
Let's recap.
Just recap
and then
on
have
5
a homework
steps.
assignment.
So, and I'm going to recap. I'm going to go step 0 is your child feels fear or anxiety about the possible consequence for their actions. So then step 1 is to reward your child for their attention. And remember, you're moving them from level 1 of motivation to level 2.
And you've moved them out of the situation
that
they were in,
and away from the fear. And now they're being rewarded. That's wonderful. Now step 2, you're going to ask your child, can you tell me what's going on? Right? And now we're moving them into level 3, love and respect, because I'm just going to listen to you. And that's what somebody who loves you would do.
It's definitely respectful to listen without interrupting.
Right. And then step 3, I'm going to tell them my perspective of the situation. And then step 4, we're going to solidify this love and respect by complimenting my child, if at all possible, related to the incident that we're talking about, to be able to give them some kind of a compliment. And then step 4, we're going to move them into character, as a motivator, by asking them what needs to happen now and allowing them to come up with their own solution. That is a character motivator, right? I'm going to do this because it's who I am. Not because mom told me to, not because I'm going to get some kind of a reward, not because I'm afraid of the consequence. I'm going to do it because I came up with a solution myself, because this is who I am. And that's why it's so important for your child to come up with their own solution. And like I say, in the beginning, that might not happen. In the beginning, they may get to that point and they may be like, I don't know what to do. And then you can give them some choices. And as you give them choices...
But don't rush them, because it takes a while to think of things.
Right. Don't
rush them.
Don't rush them through any of this.
Your ideas in.
Yeah, and don't rush through any of these steps. And remember, this is a way for you to parent them so that you are a better parent. It's not actually about making your children change. That will probably happen as a side effect, but really it's about how can I be a better parent? Oh, I can use positive parenting, be positive with my child, help them see the different levels of motivation, and hopefully get them to where they can see that they can come up with their own solutions. And you think about that, we haven't skipped consequences. There are still consequences, but the child is the one who came up with them, not the parent.
And the child's the one who's carrying them out.
And the child's the one who's carrying them out, not the parent. That's the key here, I think, in this whole process in the end, is that, no, we're never going to skip the consequence. But we're always going to let our child have the opportunity to develop their own consequence, so that as they grow and they develop as children, they grow into adults, they have that character trait of recognizing when something goes wrong, I need to solve this problem for myself. It's a wonderful, emotional, resilient training tool.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Do you have a homework assignment?
Well, okay, so obviously my homework assignment is to go use the parenting tool. Be a positive parent this week. You can practice this even with small things, or even when your child does something well. That's good. It doesn't have to be bad. There are good consequences just as much as there are bad consequences. So if your child does something...
So you can use it to help come up with a reward for a behavior you'd like to reinforce?
Exactly. So say my daughter cleans the kitchen while I'm gone, and I come home and the kitchen is clean. I can use positive parenting. I can say, hey, you want to come and sit with me for a little while and do something together? So I've given her a reward. Then I say, hey, tell me about what happened while I was gone. Right? And then she gets the opportunity to be like, well, I cleaned the kitchen. And as she does that, then I have the opportunity to say, I noticed that when I came in the house, the kitchen was clean, and it made me so happy to see that. And then I can compliment her on what a diligent daughter she is, and how it makes me happy to see when she sees something that needs to get done, that she just does it even without me asking her. And then I can say, what do you think needs to happen now? Right? And I can and there can be a positive consequence as a result of the positive thing that she did. This is not
what
only...
What if she doesn't, when you say, tell me about what happened, and the child doesn't know what you're talking about? Can you prompt them about, it was like, oh, I noticed the kitchen.
No. You just, if she's like, I don't know what you're talking about, Dad. What do you mean what happened? Then I'd be like, what happened? What did you do while I was gone? And if she doesn't say anything about the kitchen, then at the end, then it's my turn to give my perspective anyways. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, hey, I noticed that while I was gone, the kitchen got cleaned. Was that you that cleaned it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Then wait your turn. Don't prompt. Don't ever prompt your child.
Okay.
Wait your turn, because you're going to get a turn to tell them about what you've noticed.
This reminds me of your 20-minute reporting in your Fundamentals of Healthy Marriage tool, where you have to, one person speaks uninterrupted, mm-hmm. and you just have to listen.
Yeah.
And then vice versa.
Yeah, turn taking is important.
Okay.
So use the tool this week, all 5 steps.
At least once.
At least once this week, use the tool. And again, you can use it in with when you want to positive consequence for good behavior, or when there needs to be a consequence for bad behavior. But the thing is, it's never negative. Everything is positive. It's positive to give a reward. It's positive to listen to your child. You need to give your perspective in a positive way. It's positive to give a child a compliment, and it's positive to ask the child what they think needs to happen next. There's not a single point in this tool that you should ever say anything negative to your child.
All right, we'll see you next class, next lesson.